Okay, this time I have no one but myself to blame. Um, Saying that though, yeah, I admit I have a problem, and isn't that the first step? God, I hope so. What's up, Internet? Jay here with Nerd Rage Against the Machine. And today I'm going to be talking about Star Wars The Black Series. This is another one of my newest obsessions. Literally, it was a matter of I went from getting interested in Action Force, which my pre-order from Big Bad Toy Store still hasn't arrived. Any day now. To getting into G.I. Joe Classifieds, to getting into some Marvel Legends, and now I guess the Force is with me as well. Because of Christmas, you always have a little bit extra Christmas cash, presents, and things like that. This is kind of where some of this went. Is I kind of went big or went home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my impressions of the line as a whole, and some other things that I've heard. Now, before we get too far into this, no, I don't intend to try to collect the whole damn thing. From what I've seen, that's at this point logistically and financially just insane. On top of that, so I do intend to cherry pick a lot of these, like which lines I'm going to get, and I'm also strangely enough focusing on kind of the more obscure things like the TV shows. Rebels, Mandalorian are good examples of that. And I'm going to admit something right out front when it comes to Star Wars. I am somebody who does like the Disney stuff. I don't hate it. I'm not screaming bloody murder like some have. I feel like after the prequels, and I was pretty hard on the prequels, going back on them, they're not terrible. They're not great, but then again, Star Wars as a whole has some goofy plot holes, The sheer coincidence that Vader is Luke's father has always been something that's perplexed me as far as, if you want to talk about, perfection in storytelling. But again, the aesthetic is great, and bad Star Wars is still better than a lot of movies out there. Let's be honest with ourselves here, right? I mean, you can hate episodes 8 and 9 and 7 all you want, but I can think of 100 movies that are probably way worse and way worse to watch. Freddy Got Fingered, for one. That's just, and the, what's the one? The Room, Come on, there are worse films to be had for sure. So saying that, I am, like I said, trying to go more toward those niche lines. I am also trying to collect the Jedi stuff. I'm still trying to find a Jedi Luke, but in the meantime, I do have the Yavin Ceremony Luke as kind of a nice stand-in. He's not terrible. Probably the biggest thing, of course, is the land or the Snowspeeder, which I have to say this is an amazing piece. It doesn't have the electronics like the old 1980s one, but it does have all the parts moving where they should. And the electronics are also not necessary. They were, again, a cool gimmick for when I was 6, but less cool gimmick now that I'm almost 50. Saying that, the likenesses are very good. The detail on these is very good. This one here, so of course I'm knocking about everybody over to get to the one I want to get to. That's the way that this works, right? Come on. This was actually the first figure I got, which is Kanan Jarrus. I really adored Rebels. Rebels to me was the most Star Wars thing I'd seen since Star Wars. Great series. Freddie Prinze Jr. did an amazing job with the voice of this character. It's one that I definitely do want to collect, even though I know I'm on the late end and will have to start, probably hitting eBay and maybe, paying a little more unless they reissue them. But right now, the only two I have is Kanan and Sabine Wren, which they did a really good job with her as well. I love the fact that they have the moving rangefinder on the helmet and the removable helmet so that you can actually see, once it pops off, her normal face under there. Now, as far as, that line is one I'm definitely collecting. The other big one, of course, is the Mandalorian. At this day and age, I think that most people are pretty much on board with the Mandalorian stuff. The Credit Collection one, which is the one I have, has a little bit of an odd paint job. It looks like he's been through Holi, an Indian festival. He's got little splashes of color in him, but it's still a really cool looking figure. Right now, I'm missing quite a bit for Mandalorian. I do have Kuiil, I have Bo-Katan, and of course I have Grogu. And Grogu's probably, I'm going to say, my biggest disappointment. This figure has 7 pieces of articulation, including the feet, which there's no point in it. There's absolutely no point in making these feet articulate other than just to say we've added points of articulation. His accessories are microscopic to the point that I'm afraid to get them out of the package. And ultimately, I almost think it would have been better to have like separate bodies for like when he's being carried versus when he's walking on his own, just to add to the posability and design. And for $10, when you consider most of these figures are an average of 20, yikes. That's all I can say. Additionally, just for the fun of it, I do have a couple Fleet action figures, including some Mandalorians. The Black Series version of him is literally just about a head higher. So, I mean, not a huge difference. In fact, other than the fact that it's more of a solid pose with just the head moving, they're not too different a figure, honestly. So I would say Grogu is, unfortunately, the one I'm least impressed by. The other big selection I'm collecting into is Rogue One. I do have a Chimwit Inri on the way. He has not shown up yet. And as you can see right now, this is, again, the start of a collection. I'm at the point where I'm literally just getting into this. So I find myself, there's probably 20, 30 figures I'm looking for off the top of my head, but we'll get there. We really will. Now, the thing is, I do like the line, and I know it's been going, almost 8 years now, which 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. And I've heard a lot of gripes about different figures and things, and so far, like I said, I can see some of that. I do enjoy what I see. The one thing I would say, I watched a video recently that Michael French did on Luke Skywalker, and he talked a lot about how these figures for him have been a kit bash, and I get it. I totally do. He also made fun of the fact that the Black Series sounds like a liquor, and I will agree with that. Although I often think about David Mitchell, a British comedian, had a good point about the fact that after a while that name just sticks, even if it's terrible. And I think that's where we're at now. If the Black Series is a name, yeah, I will admit I still think it does sound like something that the most interesting man in the world would drink. But it's stuck. We now know, when you think black, you immediately think of the 6-inch line. And even early on, I know that when they started the Black Series, it was meant to be just like highly articulate. They were doing both the 3 3/4 and the 6-inch line, which they've now moved the 3 3/4 to the vintage collection, which makes a lot more sense in that respect. But the articulation and the detail is just amazing. This is actually one that I was really impressed with, was Vader. Just for the fun of it, I pulled out my old retro 1970s Vader. And the difference, now granted, I understand, one, you're talking about less than 4-inch to 6-inch figures, or 1/18 to 1/12. There's a huge difference there in scale, therefore they can put more detail in, but also, the fact that this has been, forever, like 1978 was when the Kenner figures arrived in shelves, about a year late, whereas this figure, this is the Empire Strikes Back Vader. I don't know how recent he is, but I'm guessing he's within the last 5 years. But the technology on him, the articulation, the cloak, the original Vader did not, just had that vinyl cloak. He didn't have a 2-piece cloak like the original Vader did. But the detail and stuff, they make astounding figures, and the posability is amazing. The one thing I will say, and again, with the age of the line, is the fact that not every figure poses as well as every other figure. If I compare this to G.I. Joe Classified, every figure there has double-jointed elbows and double-jointed knees because, well, they are newer. They had the time to put that technology in. And, I see this in a lot of reviews of this line. And, in fact, going back to the No Just Luke video that Retro Blasting did put out, Michael French made a big point about the fact that this line is not definitive because of the fact that it is, always evolving. They're always re-releasing and always putting out a new version of. So the Luke Skywalker that you got at the beginning of this line is far from the definitive one because they're just going to have 5 more coming. And I want to speak to that for a second, actually, because it really got me thinking. Because from a miniatures gaming standpoint, which is, again, where I come from, there is such a thing as saturation. So, for example, one of my favorite miniatures games is Bolt Action. I love Bolt Action. It's my jam. I have a 1,000-point army for 8 armies, specifically the 4 Allied and 4 Axis. U.S., Britain, USSR, France, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Finland. So I have put a lot of money into that game, and I have not bought anything for it in the last year or so. I mean, nothing major anyway, and specifically not Bolt Action. I have picked up some side games like Blood Red Skies and Victory at Sea, but nothing as expansive. And I think that's the one thing about this line is I don't know that you can have a definitive Star Wars line because, one, the technology is always changing. Unless they release everything in 1 year and call it a day, or make a 3-year plan of it. But also the fact that on top of that, those audiences are constantly evolving. People who were kids, when say Episode 7 came out are now teenagers. Maybe they're now looking more at the articulation than they are at the cool action features. They're getting into this line now. For me, my wife got me, like I said, Kanan Jarrus here long before I ever thought about collecting Black Series. He's been sitting on my desk for years, and it was the kind of push into this that I think the next figure I actually got was one of the Jet Troopers here. And I just kind of thought, I'd like to get into this. And then I got the Mandalorian, and then it just kind of snowballed. So, it can happen that way that you're going to get into it later. And right now, if I look at those prices, I'm praying for them to release re-releases or mod new versions of them. The next version of Jedi Luke is something I'm definitely looking forward to. I got Darth Revan when this is the re-release that they just came out with, the remix or re-release, whatever they called it. I wandered into Target and saw it, and I'm like, yep, mine. That's how it goes. Is as a newer collector, I see benefit to that, but I guess I also see his point too, and not staying in the line because, if he's gotten what he wants, Mazel Tov, more power to him. But right now, I will say that I'm enjoying the line. I love the articulation. The sculpts are amazing, and they seem to be getting better. Are they perfect? No. No line is perfect, and there are things I could definitely gripe about, including things like accessories. The fact that the Celebration Luke didn't come with a lightsaber. I think pretty much I would think every version of Luke should at least have a lightsaber, bare minimum. The fact that, again, characters I really want, like I said, I would love to get the whole cast of Rebels, but I know that I'm going to be paying through the nose for a Chopper and probably for a Hera. And so far, finding the droids has been, every time I've looked at the droids with Chewie, they've been pretty high up there in price. So, there are a lot of figures like that I'm hoping will get re-released. Newer versions, better versions, at least till I can eventually complete some form of collection. But ultimately, I'm digging this line. I really am, more than I thought I would. It's rekindled a little bit of my love for Star Wars, to be honest with you. And with the Book of Boba Fett coming out, I just watched the first 2 episodes of that, and so far so good. My personal only gripe with it is I'm getting tired of the backstory stuff, the flashbacks to the Sand People. I get it, but for me, I'm more looking forward to seeing it as a Sopranos in the Star Wars universe. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. The stuff that happened on the second episode, no spoilers, but the stuff that was more the modern stuff with the mayor, and that was really cool. But anyway, that is my kind of quick appraisal of the line and my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on it? I would love to hear more of your opinions on the line and where it goes from here. I'm planning some 3D printed elements to kind of accentuate the line, maybe some action figure photography coming in the future, which you can see on my Instagram. Yes, I'm on Instagram at Nerd Rage Against the Machine. And speaking of Instagram, I explained this on my live stream with Grindhead Jim, but I'm going to say it again here. We've hit over 100 subscribers. Yay! And we do have a winner for who's going to get that 3D printed vamp. and that is Michael Ryan, or Ryan Michael. I think that's right, Ryan Michael. So Ryan, if you're listening, hit me up on Instagram so I can get your address and I can send that vamp on its way. Additionally, if you're not interested in the vamp, I do have an alternate prize of a copy of the RPG Blades in the Dark. Either way, hit me up. You got about 2 weeks, and if I don't hear from you, then I'm going to try to raffle the vamp off again. But in the meantime, guys, happy playing, happy collecting, and I bid you all adieu.